Welcome to the video 12 Ways to Deal with Difficult People. The first way to deal with difficult people is to confront them when they say hurtful things to you. Sometimes we people pleasers tend to sweep things under the rug and keep our mouths shut. Why? Because we want to avoid conflict at all costs. The problem with this is that things can build up inside of us, causing resentment, which leads to all kinds of long-term problems and internal chaos that can make things worse. Did you know there are specific techniques that you can use whenever someone says something hurtful to you that you can use to diffuse the situation immediately? When you learn the correct response, you can put a person in a situation where they will back down, so to speak, and eventually they will learn not to speak to us in those ways. But this also helps us to clear the air, to get to the bottom of things, to stop assuming things, to find out what the real problem is and what we can do about it, if anything. Yes, holding it all inside is not the answer. That is only going to hurt you and them. The second way to deal with difficult people is to learn how to recognize irrational thoughts. We all have a tendency to think in irrational ways from time to time, like all of us. And no, saying all is not irrational when it's true. It is only irrational if it's not true. One of the best ways to eliminate conflict is to understand the difference between a rational thought and an irrational thought. This way we can recognize when other people are using irrational thinking and therefore understand that the problem is them and not us. But also we can learn to recognize when we ourselves are thinking irrationally and make the necessary corrections on our part. For example, whenever you hear someone say, "Everybody is always mean to me," this is an irrational thought because it is too general and it is not accurate. Everybody is not mean, and nobody is always mean. Life is much more complex than that, and this is the good news, but it's also the bad news. The third way to deal with difficult people is to understand that their ideas often came from somewhere else. Do you ever wonder where people get the ideas that they have? Because everyone's ideas came from somewhere, but where? A lot of the time those ideas came from childhood, which we will talk about in the next bullet point. But sometimes those ideas came from somewhere else or somebody else. Perhaps these ideas came from a friend or a mentor, or perhaps a spouse, or perhaps a family member or a co-worker. Maybe it is something that they read that influenced them. But the bottom line is that all of us navigate through life choosing what it is that we are going to accept and what we are going to reject, because we can't accept and reject everything. That would be impossible, so we have to choose. And then we reinforce those ideas. So the next time someone says some hurtful things to you, ask yourself, where did that idea come from? The fourth way to deal with difficult people is to understand that they were programmed at a very young age. A good many of our thoughts came from childhood, and the reason for this is because we became programmed at a very young age. As young children, our minds are in a downloadable theta state for the first 5 or 6 years. But why? The reason is because we have so many facts to learn in order to navigate our way around this world. Think about it for a minute. How many millions and millions of facts have we learned in our lives? How is it even possible to learn so many things and remember so many words? If we grew up in a positive and healthy environment, then we have very helpful ways of perceiving the world. But what about those of us who lived in a dysfunctional environment? The next time someone hurts you, ask yourself how they were programmed at a very young age. The fifth way to deal with difficult people is to understand that the tone that we use with people can shift the mood. Have you ever talked to someone that seems angry all of the time, no matter what, and then walked into the next room and talked to someone who seemed happy all of the time and never lets anything get them down? What about the person who is always going around making people laugh? Or at least most of the time. We can't say always because that's irrational. But you get the point. I'm talking about most of the time, a person's overall state of being. Did you ever realize that people who tend to lean more on the positive and or compassionate side of things seems to get along better with other people? Why is this? The reason is because of their overall tone. The next time someone says something to hurt you, how can you change the tone to one that is more humorous or more kind? The sixth way to deal with difficult people is to understand that everybody needs something. All of us, and I do mean every single one of us, has needs here on earth. And no, this is not irrational because it's a fact. Just like we all breathe and have a heartbeat. We all need to eat, we all need to drink, we all need to sleep, and we all need shelter. These are our most basic needs. But did you know that we all have other needs as well? The psychologist named Abraham Maslow is the one to first bring this idea to public awareness. For example, we all have the need to fit in and belong. We all need to feel loved, and we all need to feel good about ourselves and to feel like we are making a difference in the world. We all have the need to be surrounded by beauty, believe it or not. This is why we crave beautiful places and things. It is good for our emotional state. If you can become good at recognizing these things, you can begin to ask yourself the next time someone says something to hurt you, what does this person need? Normally, when people are acting out, they need something. What do you need? And how are other people's behaviors fulfilling their needs? The seventh way to deal with difficult people is to learn what behaviors to ignore and which ones to reinforce. In psychology, there are well-known concepts known as reinforcement, punishment, and extinction. These ideas came to be based on the work of Ivan Pavlov and B.F. Skinner, and they are known as operant conditioning and classical conditioning. Did you know that there are specific techniques that you can use to reinforce behaviors that you like in other people and cause other behaviors to become extinct? This is especially helpful with the people that you spend the most time with. In other words, those you live with or work with on a daily basis. What if you could learn specific techniques that would help you eliminate behaviors that upset you or bother you, and learn other techniques to strengthen those behaviors that you prefer? The first step is education. Which ideas would you prefer to ignore, and which ones would you rather reinforce? The eighth way to deal with difficult people is to learn how to call out their behavior, but not the person. We are all guilty of calling out the person rather than the behavior. Did you know that there was a study done where the overwhelming majority of people surveyed said that whenever they did something out of character or not so nice, it was because of the situation. But when others did something out of character or not so nice, it was because of their personality. Interesting, don't you think? Whenever we do something that is not so kind, we tend to blame it on the situation. We justify that behavior to ourselves. But whenever it is someone else doing it, we tend to think to ourselves, well, that's just the way they are. It's their personality. This is why it is important to address the behavior and not the person. How are they justifying it to themselves? The ninth way to deal with difficult people is to learn how to appear strong to them. Did you know that bullies, criminals, perpetrators, and predators tend to go after the weakest victim? Why is that? Stop and think about that for a minute and you will easily see the reason why. It is because if they go after someone stronger than themselves, they will not win. They will be overcome. Whenever people are being hurtful to you, it is often because they see you as someone who is weaker than themselves. Most of the time, this is caused by a lack of self-esteem, a lack of confidence. So the best defense is to build up your self-esteem. And one of the best ways to do this is to develop your knowledge, your talents, and your skills. If we can learn to value ourselves based on our own priorities instead of the priorities of others, we can develop an inner level of self-esteem and confidence. We can train others to treat us better based on the way we treat ourselves. The 10th way to deal with difficult people is to learn how to set boundaries. We all have our breaking points. We all have our thresholds of what we will and will not tolerate. What are your thresholds? Do you put up with too much from other people, or are you not willing to put up with much of anything? If I were guessing, because you are here, you put up with a lot of bad behavior and mistreatment from others. This has got to stop. We need to shift the thresholds of what you will and will not tolerate in your life, and this is called setting boundaries. But remember, boundaries are set to keep the same people from hurting you over and over again, not those who have never done anything to harm you. Get clear on what hurts you and make the decision to not let others step over those boundaries. Let them know what you will and will not tolerate. This does not mean that you are to be unkind to others. Exactly the opposite. What it does mean is that you are to learn how to be kind to yourself. The 11th way to deal with difficult people is to recognize when they have been hurt. Have you ever heard the expression, hurt people hurt people? This is so true. Can you think of a time in your life when you have felt hurt, and because of this you have said or done something to hurt someone else? I think that probably most of us can admit to being guilty of this at one time or another, because we are all human. Sometimes we need to stop and realize that the reverse is true. The next time someone says something to hurt you, ask yourself, are they hurt themselves? A good question to ask in these situations is, are you okay? You are not acting like yourself. Is everything all right? Sometimes we know that they are hurting, and maybe we know why, but we don't know what to do about it, mostly because there is not much that we can do. When this happens, just be as supportive as possible, and if it is too much to bear, help them find support from others as well. We should always be mindful of the hurt of other people. The 12th way to deal with difficult people is to learn the role of perception. One of my best friends, who was like a brother to me, used to tell me, Debbie, you are like a goose. You wake up in a different world every day. I like to believe that it was because he woke up in a different world every day and I was just responding to him. But either way, the point here is that we are all living in different worlds every day. And the reason for this is because our conscious awareness is very limited and we can only take in small pieces of information from day to day. On top of that, we all have different belief systems, different filters, different chemicals running through our bodies. If you ask one person what the color of a wall is and they say blue, and you ask another person and they say yellow, and each person is standing on opposite sides of the same wall, who is right? Chances are they are both right. They are just standing on different sides of the same wall. Remember, no two people see the world in the same way. People who hurt you see it in one way, and you see it in a different way. If you enjoyed this video, please join our free strategy group if you have not already. You can find it by going to selfesteemers.com/free group, and this will redirect you to a Facebook group that you can join, which is a free community where you can get more information like this. And in the introduction, you will find a link where you can get a free guide called The 21 Reasons Why People Are Mean to Nice People. So if you've ever wondered that, then this is the right place for you. So join our free strategy group, and I hope to see you there and talk to you soon.